Good morning. It's a beautiful day in my neighborhood. It's now 69 degrees in my apartment by design. I've kept my windows open since about 8 o'clock this morning, and it's glorious today. Well, I guess fall is coming, and here we are with the usual. Politics does affect us. You may think it doesn't, and you may be hiding in a cave, and unfortunately, 20% of the population of the United States is uneducated, illiterate, and that is by design. Politics affects us all the time. Money is allocated for schooling. Money is allocated for health care, for income stability, for the environment. All of it depends on politics. And are we the people benefiting from that money? That depends who you vote for. If you vote for the current Republican Party, their benefactors are big oil, big industry. They're not me and you. They're leaving us to scramble over what little water resources we have. And why do we have little resources? Because the fossil fuel industry has hoodwinked us for 50 years. For 50 years, their lobbyists and their organizations have said, you don't have to worry about climate change. It's a myth. And they just denied and denied and denied and obscured the truth. So, politics does indeed affect us. What else affects us? Well, there's a pithy saying that nobody likes money as much as a rich person, except the poor. But that's not true. The rich really value money far more than the poor and the middle class. Because you know that Internet of Things, it's not just things. It's propaganda. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, they're controlling the narrative. And who are the they? The big moguls who own the social media platforms and the corporations, and also the 12 to 77 people who control the narrative on the internet. Imagine, I don't seem to be able to find the time to tweet 800 to 1,600 times a day. Donald Trump does. He does it incessantly, and his people pick up the tweets and they retweet them. And when that's not enough, they automate those tweets so that everything is done on demand, on a schedule. Imagine being inundated with 100,000 tweets a day, all saying the same thing. The 2020 election is a lie, or complaining that the raid on Mar-a-Lago was a lie too. Now, it takes a really wealthy person or a person paid to use the internet so often to be involved in this pursuit. Because there's money at the end of that tunnel. That's why they're doing it. They're doing it for the money that would have accrued to you and to me. they're not sharing. They've done it so that they could perpetuate COVID vaccine denial and talk about cures that weren't effective and were indeed harmful to human beings. They've done it since 2015, when Trump used the Internet Research Agency and Cambridge Analytica, which it turns out was sponsored by the Mercers, to in fact manipulate how we think and how we vote. And that's happening today in spades. The social media platforms are a megaphone for controversy, denial, misinformation, and lies. And it's part of what they do as a corporation. Their model is profit. In Facebook's model, he's got profit in there, but he also likes a lot of violence, a lot of hate speech, and a lot of lies, and he doesn't correct for it, which is why politics does affect us, especially when politics doesn't work for us and works against us, as I'm finding out in the age of surveillance capitalism. It's not just things that are on the internet now. We are. Our behavior. And wealthy people who don't want to give up their way of life and want to take the last resources that we have away from us, they're using the internet to their advantage. They're looking at our behavior, they're looking at our searches, and they're predicting what we may do in the future. And that information, even health information, when we use our health apps, that could be going to third parties. So insurers, your employer, your credit unions, your credit agencies, all could be buying the data on you and me. Not me so much. I use Apple. And I know that the Apple model is not one of profit. Not even a little. They're not selling our data to third parties. Steve Jobs and now Tim Cook, they're just interested in making products. They're not interested in the profit off of our behavior. Twitter has now cracked down on politicians. They're not allowing politicians to campaign on the web and solicit funds or talk against other people. So they're limiting the speech of some politicians who would perpetuate lies and misinformation. You can't do it so much on Twitter, which is not to say that some of Trump's tweets haven't gone viral in seconds, because he learned well from the Internet Research Agency and from Facebook when they helped him during the 2015 and 2016 in the run-up to his election. $70 million went a long way for Trump and Trump's lies, and that's what they are. And any one politician that is carrying that lie forward, well, they're just deceiving you if you believe it. They went against our democracy. They're weakening our democracy. Telling lies doesn't help Americans. Being uneducated doesn't help us either, because then you can't discern what is the truth and what isn't. And you don't even know when, perhaps, that you can vote and where. Which is why, since politics does affect us, the other day when I had a meet and greet at our temple, we also, at the end of our dinner, started writing postcards to people in Georgia, telling them where their polling booths were so that they could register and vote and take friends with them. Because in a lot of the southern states, that information is obscured. Or the Department of Motor Vehicles, which would have been available for voting, some of them are now closed when folks have to vote, forcing people to drive 200 miles. And folks are being urged to take the appropriate ID with them, water, and whatever necessities they may need, because politics in their state has dictated that if you give folks water, that's against the law. So politics really does affect us, and we're entering the midterms. North Carolina is already voting, and I know for a fact that the Republican mantra is sponsored by big money, billions of dollars. And billions of dollars are going to Florida and to Texas, where a lot of the alt-right billionaires are now going to reside, to make sure that that state has their voice heard through DeSantis or Abbott. But they're not for you and me. No, sir. They're for climate denial, they're for COVID vaccine denial, and they're for election denial. Everything that would rile up the public, but nothing that gives the middle class a social safety net. Absolutely, I had supported the old Republican Party. When I was working on Long Island as a contractor, many of my developers supported the Republican Party because that was the party in power. And they wanted to get permits for housing. They also wanted to do bailouts in 2008. They wanted to be able to give subsidies to buy homes on the island so they could continue building. They wanted decreases in mortgages, the amount that people would have to pay per month. None of that was passed. And because none of those great programs were passed, the people that I worked for stopped supporting the Republican delegates personally. Sure, they might give to the Republican Party on occasion, but not all the time, because they were not rewarded. And once again, who's footing the bill for everyone's disaster? Fossil fuel companies say, you gotta prove that it's not cost effective to use us. Well, on the one hand, it's cost effective to use them if you have blinders on and you don't see the orange skies in California and the pollutants that they're carrying from the fires. If you don't see what the lack of water in the Shasta Valley is causing people, again, along the mountain ranges that feed the indigenous people and the ranchers in California. You don't see what's happening to folks who are living in heat deserts. Because why? They can't escape from the heat. Well, California is doing something for them too. And I think it's a great idea and a great model for folks in New York City and in Maryland and other cities. They're creating resilience centers, places like a community center where people can go full time. They have learning for kids, they have entertainment for adults, they work in conjunction with the schools and the churches, and they provide food to people in need. But they also supply air conditioning when it's needed through solar panels and battery packs, and heat if that's needed too. So they're taking care of all the people all the time. It's not like going into a gym with 1,000 chairs and sitting there waiting to cool off. That's not humane. We need politics out of our redistricting system, out of our census, because the politicians undercounted the census by 18.8 million people. That was under Trump. And that means less money for the states that were undercounted and less money for the poor and the middle class. So you bet, when you've got an oligarchy that is working with government and suppressing government, you're not going to get a social safety net for us. That's why they don't like the Democrats as much as they're saying they hate them. It's not that the Democrats are bad people. It's just that the Democrats spend time actually working, a lot of them, to pass the legislation that's needed. Unfortunately, at this point in time, there's nobody on the Republican side passing legislation that would rein in social media platforms, that would create programs for the EPA so that we could have better standards of pollution, that would create a clean slate for labor. There's so much that government can do, because the deep state is really the folks who have been in government, irrespective of which party gets in. They're the people who do the work, and those poor folks have been undermined for generations. It's time we stop listening to this Republican Party. This Republican Party wants no regulation and small government. Well, government put in Elon Musk. Government let it be appropriate that industry could develop rockets to space and satellites. Government does a lot to help us. You may be in disbelief, but it's true. Government can do bad things. That's true. But don't blame it 100% on the Democrats, because they're not wasting their time telling you untruths. But the Republicans, they definitely are. Those who are not like Cheney and more like Trump, they're into disinformation. And what we don't know can harm us. That's my message, folks. There's so much to say and so little time. I'm not tweeting 800 times a day. I'm busy. Yeah, I read 5 hours a day, books, periodicals like Foreign Affairs. I attend seminars remotely. I'm active in my temple and my women's organization and social action. both in shul and politically. I'm a doer. We've got a big voice and we've got a vote coming up. And I do think you should not press that lever reflexively for the Republican Party that doesn't support you. They, like Joe Manchin on the Democratic side, they support big business. And big business likes life just the way it is. No government intervention, self-regulation, and that's the name of their game. Lawlessness doesn't give me and you a social safety net. We don't want it, folks. You gotta reject it. And now's the time. The midterms are upon us. So, on this beautiful day in New York City, I know I'm going to enjoy the weather, but I'm also always mindful of what's happening to us, the indigenous Indians, the folks on the Colorado River, the people in my city. I'm not pleased that we're going to be putting up tents for refugees either, from other states or other countries. We've got hotels that are probably empty and office space. I think if it's for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, we can manage that somewhere. We don't have to duplicate the worst of this world. We can duplicate the best, what's humane. Just like they did in Newfoundland when we were bombed on 9/11. All those planes that were slated to come here to U.S. airspace, about 18 to 30 of them went to a small town where they all worked together to help each other out during the emergency. We should remember those people and those days. Remember, we are the United States of America, and I do believe in American exceptionalism. When we put our minds to it, we can come up with new industries and do better than we did before. God bless you and have a wonderful day. Bye now.